Well, hello there, and welcome to the Vegan Life magazine podcast. And you can tell, because I've put on a different piece of music, that something's up. And yes, it is. We're kicking off our world tour. We thought that, with lockdown and travel restrictions and stuff, maybe if you can't get out there and see the world, we could bring a little bit of the world and its variform cuisine to you. So over the next few weeks, over the summer, we're going everywhere, man. We're going to Africa, Mexico, India, Thailand, the Caribbean, France, Spain, and the Middle East. And if you've got any questions on any aspect of the cuisines of those respective countries and regions, why don't you email podcast@veganlifemag.com. But we kick off with one that I cannot wait to get my teeth into, Japan. Let's meet our chefs. Tim Anderson was the winner of 2011's MasterChef. He's now a chef and writer of 4 amazing Japanese food publications, his most recent being Vegan Japan Easy. Tim studied Japanese food history as well as living in Japan for several years. Yoshiko Takeuchi runs a successful cooking school with 20 years in the food business, obsessed with Japanese superfoods and sharing how they can be used not only for your favorite Japanese meals, but also incorporated into a variety of your favorite daily meals. And Lisa Kitahara runs a successful food blog, Okonomi Kitchen?
Yeah, Okonomi is good, yeah.
Okay, you're like, we'll go with that for today. Lisa also shares her delicious plant-based recipes on Instagram to a vast following. And it's 5 a.m. for Lisa, which is why she does not have to switch her camera on. That would not be a fair thing to do.
Totally understand.
I generally look like Gandalf at 5 a.m, so yeah. I would not go for that myself. Anyway, all of you, welcome. I'm really, really excited about this. I find Japanese food really exciting, and I'm conscious that I don't know enough about it. I've got a few wildcard questions that are just my own personal questions I want to throw at you later on. But we've had some great questions in. Don't forget, you can always email us any kind of question based on plant-based food. We will field it to the best person to answer it. It's podcast@veganlifemag.com. And let's start with Gabriel, whose question is great, I think, which is, what does umami mean? And how can I achieve this? You're right, for 17 podcasts, we've been talking about umami, and I've been sort of nodding sagely. I don't really know anything about it. Tim, let's start with you. How would you define umami?
So umami is a basic taste. In the West, we're typically thought that there are 4 basic tastes: salty, sour, sweet, and bitter. But really, there's a 5th one, and there may be more. Scientists are sort of they're undecided on how many basic tastes there really are. But umami is the savory basic taste. The reason that we use the word umami is not because it's a particularly Japanese thing. Umami is universal; you get it in any kind of cooking. But it was discovered in Japan by a Japanese scientist in 1907. And the word literally means delicious taste.
Right. So it's been around. It's been around since 1907 as a thing.
Yeah. The thing is, it's sort of more subtle than bitter, salty, sour, or sweet. You might not notice it as much as those other tastes, but you definitely notice when it's not there. And umami also, in Japan, the connotations are a bit broader. They also have to do with things like the overall balance of a dish and how satisfying it tastes. That's basically umami in a nutshell. It's much more simple and I think less sort of mystical than a lot of people make it out to be.
Yoshiko, would you agree with that?
Yes, and I was very surprised and happy to hear that you guys didn't say umami, so it's umami is the right pronunciation. Thank you very much. And yes, I would like to, yes, definitely, this is the 5th flavor. It's a tastiness, so if I can add a little bit more. So, that the MSG, the naughty, naughty, unhealthy flavor enhancer.
Naughty, so but so delicious.
Yeah. Yes, but that's actually the chemical part of the umami flavor, because umami rich food is expensive, as so that's why that's the number one thing. So but we can achieve the beautiful flavor without the MSG, so that's my healthy thing. I know Jake, you don't like those healthy thing. And another thing is that
my reputation precedes me. Amazing.
And another thing is umami have 3 different types of umami flavor. So when you mix with different type of umami flavor, it's gonna even become more powerful. So that's why that the Japanese traditional dashi is, which is a stock made from kelp, the kombu, and the bonito flake, the katsuobushi. So that's a different types of umami flavor. But it's a vegan version, the shiitake, dried shiitake mushroom with another type of umami flavor compared to the kombu. So that's that two things together, it's gorgeous. But if you just use the kombu or shiitake, not so fabulous. So it's very important to mix different type of umami.
So what you're saying is that monosodium glutamate is like the crystal meth of the umami world.
Yes, that's right. So that's
Gotcha.
why Japan invented that Ajinomoto or whatever that is using. Yes.
Lisa, what about you? What for you is umami?
I agree with both of them. I think it's just like this, it's kind of a hard flavor to describe because the word itself is that description almost. Because when you say something like, oh, something is salty, it's hard to say like how to explain the word salty. It's just a word, and I think it just like kind of means delicious. And like I think it's definitely a word you would use for savory. I think I don't think you don't really hear it for something that's sweet, but I think it's just a word that you would describe that when you can't describe if it's salty, sweet, sour, or any other flavor types, you know? And you have that, it's kind of just that, it's like a depth of flavor almost to the dish along with maybe something that is salty. So I think that's kind of how I would take that word.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had some good advice from Yoshiko on ingredients that can give you that sort of flavor note.
Yeah.
Do you have any other suggestions for?
When I think of umami, I really do think of something like dashi. It's like kombu and shiitake, and it's like if you don't really want to go for that exact MSG, maybe you can substitute it for something like shiitake or like a mushroom broth powder, or just adding kombu dashi or shiitake dashi in addition to that, for example, like a marinade or something.
Okay, Jackie asks, what are staple ingredients I need in my cupboard to make basic Japanese sauces and broths? Jackie, I love this question. Lisa, let's start with you.
For Japanese sauces, the main ones you would need typically is soy sauce, Japanese soy sauce, sake, mirin, and sugar. I think those four are the main ingredients you would see. Like I feel like Japanese sauces are very repetitive. I get this comment a lot actually. They're like, why do all your sauces contain the same ingredients like all the time? It's basically soy sauce, mirin, sake, and sugar. And it's because I think it's just that flavor combination just really works in so many dishes, and the way you kind of like cook off the additional sake or mirin is kind of determines like the thickness of the sauce. So for example, something like teriyaki sauce, it thickens and it would become kind of like a glaze almost, right? And even within the ratios, if you change up the amount of sugar or the amount of sake or mirin, the flavor does change a little, and it depends on the dish you're going for. So if you want kind of like a less sweet, lighter dish, then obviously you would cut back a little on the sugar. And then with the sake, it kind of, for things like, it's also one of those harder ingredients to explain what it kind of does to the dish until you kind of actually taste the dish. And I feel like those are the ingredients that really do give it that quote unquote umami flavor, right? And for broths, for us, I actually don't even use vegetable broth that often, even when I'm cooking, even if it calls for vegetable broth. I know, like, I always end up just using dashi or kombu dashi and shiitake dashi. It just really just adds that, or I would add it in addition to the vegetable broth. And it just really does take that extra soup a step further, I feel like. And it gives that umami flavor.
Yoshiko, let's can you talk a little bit about mirin and what it is and and what it does.
Yeah, so yeah, I totally agree that Lisa, but I'm gonna put the miso and as well. But the mirin is sweet rice wine. The difference between mirin and sake is rice wine. So mirin has more rice koji, which is a culture, and so that breaks down the sugar in the rice. That's why it's sweeter. But I would love to tell you everybody about the mirin, because mirin, real genuine mirin, doesn't contain sugar at all. The natural sweetness coming from only from the rice koji. But the second good one is home mirin, the Japanese one. Normally have a little bit of the sugar with a koji fermented, but there is a horrible one called the mirin style seasoning, which is made from water, chemical, salt, and sugar. So if you buy such a horrific whatever water, chemical water, just use the bloody sugar. So that's what I would like to tell everybody. And you have to check the ingredients label. Then you will know that it's a real or not.
Talk to us a little bit about miso and how you use it.
Oh, miso is I use for sauces, and also that the miso soup. I actually having a miso soup almost every day now. I'm getting old, that's why I crave the miso soup every day. It's getting mad. So yes, but I mix with my salad. I make the dressing using the miso, or I make the sauce on the grilled eggplant, or we call it dengaku miso, or I mix the miso with yuzu and which is the citrus, the fruit, Japanese fruit, and the mix, and it's just so many things you can do. Soup from sauce to dressing, or my assistant actually eat the miso on top of the rice and eat it as well. So it's mad. It's full of umami flavor with about 400 nutrients in one miso. If you're using the alive, real miso, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I use miso flavor product, which is just, no, I'm kidding.
Yes.
Tim, what about you? What are your go-tos for sauces and broths?
Yoshiko and Lisa pretty much covered it. The only thing I would advocate for is having dashi powder or concentrate in the cupboard, because this is kombu dashi powder or kombu tsuyu is just a really great, convenient, and quite delicious sort of shortcut, which is not inauthentic in any way. It's just people in Japan use it, so don't feel like you're cheating if you're using instant dashi. It's also great just as a seasoning, like if you sprinkle some dashi powder on something like fried rice or baked potatoes, it's fantastic, gives you that umami boost. I want to pick up on koji as well, actually, because I think that's really important. Yoshiko was talking about it with miso in particular, but it's also in sake and soy sauce and mirin production, as well as a lot of other traditional Japanese foods. And some years ago when I was taking a Japanese food seminar, the instructor pointed out that there are two what he called pillars of Japanese flavor. One is dashi, and that's quite a distinctive, that kombu and katsu or kombu and shiitake aroma. And the other one is koji. And koji has this very unique sort of earthy, fruity, nutty, sometimes floral aroma that is very, very Japanese, and it's sort of key to incorporating into Japanese dishes.
What is koji?
It's
a really dumb question.
No, it's all right. Sorry. They call it the national fungus of Japan. It's a mold basically that converts starch to sugar in rice, and soybeans, and all kinds of other products that then can be re-fermented into miso, soy sauce, sake, etc.
Amazing. Okay, gotcha.
I use the instant dashi powder all the time, so don't worry.
Oh, me too. Yeah. Honestly, I rely on that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
me too.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I need to get me some of that.
Absolutely.
Sammy says, Japanese episode. Yay! Yeah, I feel the same way. In my local Sainsbury's, they sell a sushi making kit with a bamboo rolling thingy to use. That's a technical term. I really want to try this as I love Japanese flavors, and I would love to wow friends and family. Can I have some rolling tips? And can I have some great vegan sushi recipes, please? Yoshiko, let's start with you.
Okay. I have been teaching how to make sushi, I think over 3,000 people in Australia now. So I actually know what people make mistakes, and I can list like forever. But should I go through everything? Like I sometimes teach 150 people one day. So can I go through everything? Okay, number one. Should I? It's too many. It's a lot to it. Come on, but I don't know. But don't put too much filling, because you can't close it. Yeah, that's number one. Number two,
so that whole aubergine. Yeah.
No, you can't close at all. I see everywhere. Number two, don't put too much rice. People just get greedy and put lots of rice. Again, all you taste is rice. Come on, you need a very thin layer. That's number two. Number three, you have to land on the right place. So somebody who is oh my God, and they just landed too early. Then when you cut it, it's become like when you cut it, the sushi looks like a spiral. It's a coward person, the sushi. But you have to land right above the rice that you spread it. That's the place you have to land. And number four is you have to roll tightly. Otherwise, when you cut it, you can't cut it. If you are too soft, you can't cut the nori roll properly. And yes, and also the very simple, put your sushi mat close to your body. People put the sushi mat very far away from you, and also the people put the nori sheet in the middle of the sushi mat. No, you have to put the nori and the sushi mat very close to you, so it's easier to roll. So that's the tip of my things. Period.
Wow. That was, I loved your passion.
Yeah, I was just going to say, she's so passionate, but I love it.
So, will you just stop putting it so far away? I loved it.
Bye.
It's true though, yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa, what about you?
I haven't really made sushi all that often, to be honest. I don't know. I always just end up throwing everything into a bowl and calling it a day. But when I used to make sushi with my mom a lot, I didn't really think about it too hard, just because I think we're used to seeing how it's kind of just done when my grandma and my mom would do it. And like when she was saying, like when people would put the rolling mats really far away, now that she says that, it brings me back to when I was like making sushi with like my friends and stuff. Like they would have their arms out really far and kind of like trying to roll it. And I think another tip for making sushi is kind of the amount of pressure you put on when you're kind of rolling the sushi rice. Because I find either people are scared to squish the rice too much, so they're not rolling it tightly enough. And I think there's a difference between rolling it tightly and rolling and just like purely kind of what's it called, like putting pressure on it, where you're like mushing the rice almost, right? So I think there's like that balance, and it really just does. I think it really just does come with practice. You'll figure out what works best for you. And another one is using fresh rice or cooked warm rice that's not been like sitting in the fridge, because that kind of rice will crumble apart. And I've had people tell me like, oh, when they're making onigiri or sushi, it like falls apart. And then I'm like, okay, so what kind of rice are you using? And they'll tell me they're using like jasmine rice or basmati rice. And those rices are a little bit not as sticky, so they fall apart easier. And also the cold rice, that's why people will recommend to use the cold rice for things like fried rice, where you don't want it to kind of like stick together, right? So I think those two are my top two tips as well.
Because it's a very specific rice. It's a short grain
and
rice.
It does taste different too. Like I don't think you want to be using jasmine or basmati rice for sushi. Like definitely, I mean, if you like that, then go ahead. Of course, you do you. But typically, I think you want the rice to be very neutral in flavor. And with Japanese rice, it really does have this distinct soft smell and neutral flavor, so it doesn't really like overpower, so that you can't really taste the inside ingredients, if that makes sense. I don't know if that like kind of yeah
that makes perfect sense. Tim?
So I really have to echo what Lisa said about the rice. In fact, one of my biggest pet peeves is seeing people cook Japanese food with non-Japanese rice. I mean, yes, it's okay in your home, but like it doesn't really work, especially in something where you have to shape the rice. There's a certain level of stickiness that you get from Japanese rice that is perfect, and it'll keep everything together. And also, again, use the fresh rice. It's really important. as for fillings, I like things that sort of echo the sort of creamy or soft textures of rich fatty fish, like toro or salmon, things like that. So and also things that are colorful. So I think things like roasted red peppers that maybe have been marinated in a bit of ponzu, roasted sweet potatoes are fantastic that you could season with a bit of miso, or good old avocado and cucumber. These things are really they give you a range of flavors, a range of colors, and a range of textures. And I think that's important in a sushi meal. I also read recently, and I don't know if this is true, but that the guy who invented the California roll by combining avocado and crab was actually trying to replicate the flavor and texture of toro, tuna belly, that he couldn't get in California. So there's a lot of great textures and stuff you can get from different vegetable preparations. But I'll also say about sushi is I recently learned about something called a temaki party, which is basically, temaki are hand rolls. They're you don't use a mat to roll them. You have smaller squares of nori, and then you pile in rice and filling, and you sort of just hold them in your hand almost like a little taco or a little burrito. And what you can do at a temaki party is bring all your rice, your nori, your toppings, your seasonings to the table. You can have a range of different things for people to try, and they sort of assemble their own sushi in their hands. It may not be as impressive visually, but it's a lot of fun, and it saves you from rolling. I
was going to say, it saves like 14 hours of work, doesn't it? It's a good idea.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of temaki parties lately.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Yoshiko, what are your what ingredients do you like to have inside your sushi?
Yes, I think that the people just love mayonnaise, right? So good old, avocado and the asparagus or cucumber. Put squeeze the mayo, you win. Or my favorite is Tim said capsicum, but I like putting the sun-dried tomato and a cucumber and avocado. Very good combination too. And also that I sometimes marinate a tofu with kind of sweet chili, sesame oil, and soy and the lime juice. Yum, yum. And put the crunchy veggies. So yum. So that's what I do in my class. And the non-vegan will enjoy too.
Aha. Which is always, we're always looking to recruit. Yeah.
Yes.
Lisa, what about you? Any tips for ingredients?
Yeah, I think my go-tos are definitely the avocado and just vegetables. Like I do like to add a little bit of something like a sweet potato, kind of a little bit more, kind of gives it a little more oomph to the sushi, not just like cucumbers. And the avocado, like Tim was saying, it adds that extra fattiness to it. And even with the mayo, like it adds that fattiness to it, which I think is great for vegan sushi, just because when you're eating just like a cucumber roll, it's not as satisfying, right? And personally, for me, one of my favorite ingredients to add is natto, which is fermented soybeans. So I love that, but definitely that is like an acquired taste too. So
I definitely want to talk more about natto in a bit.
Oh, I'm so
that's one of my questions I want to talk about.
The way Yoshiko was passionate about sushi, I'm like that with natto. So, but anyways,
okay, amazing.
But avocado and natto work really good together. I find those two and takuan. I'm trying to think of the English word takuan. Pickled radish, pickled daikon. Yeah, that's what it is. It's the yellow one. That or kimchi with natto and avocado in a sushi roll. Oh, one of my favorite combinations. Yeah. So good. And another one is just like vegetable tempura rolls with the avocado as well. Avocado, I feel like, just adds extra yumminess to any kind of sushi roll, or like vegan mayonnaise or something. But yeah, I think just playing around with different like vegetable combinations and natto and whatever you like, honestly. Like if it's, I mean, I feel like you can even add like, you know how some brands have like fried shrimp or something, or like fried chicken or something, and you can cut those up and put them into there too, just for like a fun variation. And another really good one I think is fried tofu pockets, so aburage. You can kind of put some seasoning and flavorings onto that and then roll that up into sushi as well. Or you can just make inari sushi, which is just like the standard way of making the tofu pocket sushis.
Yeah, tell me about those tofu pockets. Where do you get them? They're so delicious.
Oh yeah, they're so delicious. Good. I get them at my local. Yeah, there's a lot of sugar in it, but it's good.
Yeah.
I've actually been making inari sushi with amazake, like the sweeter,
Amazake?
Yeah, and then like I sweeten it with that. So
right, amazake is like is it fermented?
Yeah.
It's a soy thing. It's very sweet and it's kind of delicious. You can mix it up with hot milk, I think.
Yeah.
Right? And it tastes a little bit like Horlicks if you're listening.
Kind of,
Britain.
yeah. I usually like to drink it in the winter and add a little ginger to it. And I don't know if it's placebo, it probably is, but it makes me feel warm, like in the morning. Instead of like having my coffee, I have amazake with a little ginger and it like warms my soul. So, but
yeah.
What were we talking about before this again?
We're talking about sushi.
Sushi, right. Inari sushi, where do you get the aburage pockets? So I wasn't able to find them here in Toronto for quite a long time. Like I looked at Asian markets everywhere and I couldn't find it. But and then I realized that this local Japanese store carries them now, and they come frozen and they come in a pack of 5, and I feel like most of them it's pretty similar in terms of packaging. I've seen the same packaging like in every video and online everywhere. So it's like this yellowish one. It comes in 5, and you would just typically like season it yourself and then kind of stuff it in with the rice, and then you have inari sushi.
Perfect. And a question, I love that you all have a very liberal attitude of, you do your thing. But are we eating sushi wrong? Like the way we get it in the UK typically is, we buy it in a fast food place and it comes with a little fish-shaped thing full of soy sauce and a little smear of wasabi in a little sachet and then another little sachet with the pickled ginger in. And everybody kind of loads everything onto the sushi and eats it. Now, is that how we're supposed to be eating it, or are we doing it all wrong, Yoshiko?
Okay. I think that the what you describe is not the Japanese sushi restaurant. It's more like a sushi go around thingy, isn't it? Because it's everything is a sachet and everything. In Japan we don't see much mayo, or I see the people dipping the soy sauce on the rice side, nigiri, put the rice and you break it. Of course, you're going to break the rice because you're not supposed to put the soy sauce onto rice. You have to put it on the top of the thing, So that kind of thing. And but what can we do? Everybody has to enjoy his own way. So yes, it's okay. Yes, it's different. Yes.
It's nice of you not to judge.
Yes.
Out loud, at least, yeah. And what about the pickled ginger? What is that? Because I think I saw a TV show and that was supposedly that's like a palate cleanser, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also that the ginger.
So it's not something that you eat with, yeah.
Yes. Also that the pro foodie actually touch the soy sauce onto the ginger, and you can brush the ginger onto your sushi to be elegant as well. And also that the ginger is of course palate cleanser, as well as when you eat sashimi, which is not relevant to here. You can kill the bacteria as well. So it's more like killing the bacteria as well as a cleanse, and also you can be elegant to eat your nigiri sushi. That's all.
It's always been my dream to be elegant.
Yeah.
Tim, are you an elegant sushi eater?
So, no, I'm not an elegant eater of anything, but
I'm with you.
I gotta say, I'm kind of two minds about sushi because I'm not a person who makes sushi well. I don't do it at my restaurant. I don't do it professionally. I'm not trained to do it. I'll do it at home because if it turns out badly, it doesn't matter. So I really appreciate the sort of craftsmanship of it and the artistry of it. On the other hand, even in Japan, there is quite B-grade, silly additive sushi. I always think of this one sushi place, a chain in Japan, that sold all kinds of weird sushi. One of the silliest was gyoza nigiri. It was literally a gyoza on top of a bed of rice.
And then there
Wow.
are things that are covered in mayonnaise. I've seen Korean barbecue sushi, fried chicken sushi. There's a place that does cheese tempura sushi. And all of this is in Japan. So that there is like a precedent for this kind of like bizarre, extreme sushi.
That's kind of encouraging, because like the worst nachos I ever had was in Mexico. They were so bad.
And the thing is, like, there's still a, I don't know, there's a tension there, but I think you have to almost compartmentalize them. You have to know that the sushi that you're getting at the supermarket or at the conveyor belt place is not proper, necessarily, not the real deal.
Sure, sure. But these are some great tips for, you know, how not to get hounded out of a really high-end sushi restaurant. Lisa, do you have any other advice on how to eat sushi?
I don't know if this is still now a thing, but chopsticks versus hands, eating chopsticks versus hands. So I always grew up just eating sushi with my hands. And then I noticed most people, though, eat it with chopsticks. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Like I don't know the history too far in depth about whether or not you should be eating it, or if it's like better to eat it with chopsticks or your hands. I know like sashimi, you would use your chopsticks, but with like rolls and just like nigiri sushi, I feel like people ask me like, is it rude to eat it with your hands? But I feel like in Japan, you usually do eat it with your hands. So I don't think you have to think too hard. I think it's just preference, but I like to eat it with my hands, and I find the experience more, I don't know how to say it, but it's like I feel tied with the sushi, you know? It makes it taste better to me.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it makes it taste better personally to me.
Yeah.
And
well, it depends, you know, whether or not you've washed your hands.
Oh, yeah.
Sure it tastes amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're out and about, I would recommend using chopsticks. But if you're at home, like go, like it's like eating, eating French fries. Like use your hands, you know. But
I remember when I was 5 and I had some posh relatives, and I went round to, I think they were having some sort of party, and we went there, and they were serving burgers, and because I knew it was posh and I had to be on best behaviour, I was crying trying to eat this burger with a knife and fork. My mum was like, "It's okay."
No.
So I think that's probably the most encouraging thing you could say, is to say it's okay. You don't have to use chopsticks. There'll be a lot of very cack-handed people in Britain going, "Oh, thank God for that."
I think another.
No. Can I add the things about eating the sushi by hand? It's actually that the making the perfect nigiri shari, the rice on the nigiri, is very hard. So if the machine will make very tight, so you can eat with the chopstick. But when you respect your real sushi chef, you can eat with the hand, and you actually show the respect. So when you go to the very good sushi restaurant, you should eat with your hand to show the respect. And you go to the sushi restaurant, you do whatever you like. Yes.
And I think another thing is
yes.
Just to add on to Yoshiko, she was saying how the ones you buy are really hard. That's like one of my biggest pet peeves of sushi, because then people will buy that and be like, "Oh, this is what sushi is. The rice is so hard," and like I've had just horrendous experience with like refrigerated sushis, and like personally, like I wouldn't really call that sushi. It's just hard rice with a cucumber inside of it.
It's almost an artificial diamond.
Yeah, like some places just do it really bad, but I mean, the rice just doesn't even taste like Japanese rice. So I'm like, what are they using here? And I feel like some people or places also don't use sushi vinegar or sushi seasoning. They use rice, just purely rice vinegar, or something that's something off about it. And I don't know if they're using the right seasoning, so that could be it too for the rice. But yeah, that's a really good point that you've touched on. What's the best way to season sushi rice? Let's just quickly touch on that, Lisa. I use just whatever. My mom always just used the bottled one that says sushi seasoning, and I just grew up with that. I don't know if there's like anything that's like more traditional there, but my mom always took the shortcut route, you know.
Yoshiko.
Yes, normally sushi rice is made from the rice vinegar and the sugar and salt. Lots of it. So people think sushi is healthy, but not really. But I'm so agree with Lisa that some sushi rice is not seasoned well. So what they do is they use just distill the ordinary vinegar. So it's not rice vinegar. So Japanese rice and the vinegar that fermented with rice koji matches very well. But if you use the non-rice vinegar, it's not matches well. So that's the difference. Yes. So that's why you really do need to use it. Yes.
So like in the UK, most of the vinegar sold in fish and chip shops is not vinegar. It's called non-brewed condiment, which means it's not vinegar. It's not malt vinegar. It's just something that tastes like vinegar. It's some kind of acid that's a byproduct of something. I can't remember what. But yeah, same principle, I suspect.
Yeah.
Right. We're halfway through the questions and it's time to ask the question that we ask every week. Yes, what do you do with tofu? I'm so excited to find out.
Oh
Tim, let's start with you.
Excited.
I'm going to say something that's kind of slightly not Japanese, if that's okay. And
yeah. This
tofu.
This is a wild card question. You can answer however you like.
Mabo tofu. So there is a version. Mabo tofu is a Szechuanese dish, and it's really, really flavorful. It's spicy, and it's got Szechuan peppercorn, so it's numbing as well. It's got that mala flavor. It's got fermented black beans. It's got leeks usually. It's really well balanced actually too. It's a bit sweet, a bit salty, a bit tangy. And I love Mabo tofu. And I spent a few weeks years ago obsessing over it and trying to sort of settle on a recipe that I was happy with, and I finally did. Usually Mabo tofu has pork mince in it, ground pork, but it bothered me because I thought, you're not really tasting much of the pork. It was more of a textural thing. You get the little chew of the chewy bits. And so what I settled on as a vegan version is to use whole grains, like big chewy whole grains like pearl barley or freekeh or buckwheat or whole bulgur wheat. Those give you a same kind of consistency, and again, it's not much of a flavor difference because you get so much from the seasonings. Now, if I'm going to answer this with a Japanese recipe, I would say you can make mabo tofu, which is the Japanese version of mapo tofu, which is a bit milder, a bit sweeter, because the Sichuanese original version is quite sort of over the top, intense. So look them both up. They're quite easy to make. They come together quickly, and they're so delicious. Both versions. You can finally. What I did in the end was I found a middle ground, which is not quite as extreme as the Sichuanese version, and not quite as mild as the Japanese version.
That's a top tip. I'm gonna Google the heck out of that in a second.
Yeah.
Lisa, what about you?
Like Tim was saying, there's just so many dishes to do with tofu. Like I could go on and on and on about tofu, especially because I think this is a really interesting point about tofu. In Japan, there's not like extra firm, medium firm, silken, hard silken, all these like types of tofu that you'd find in North America. There's like, I think mainly 4. So there's momen, kiri tofu. I don't know what the... Is it
kinugoshi tofu?
Kinugoshi tofu. Kinugoshi. Kinugoshi and momen. And momen is the firmer version. And then you have atsuage and aburage. So atsuage is just purely deep fried tofu, no coating on the outside. And then you have agedashi tofu, which is like a little bit of coating. It can either be a starch or a flour, and it's deep fried and just has like the outside a little crispy, and you want to maintain that crispiness. Whereas atsuage, you can use it for stir fries, and you put like sauces or ankakes, which is kind of like almost like a lighter gravy on top. And then there's aburage, which is used for the inari sushi. And then you have the other 2 tofus that you would typically call in North America soft tofu or silken tofu. And then momen tofu is the firmer version. So it's kind of, depending on the brand, it's kind of like either soft tofu or it's between medium firm tofu and soft tofu. And then you have I can never say that one. Kinugoshi tofu. Kinugoshi tofu. Kinugoshi tofu.
That's silken tofu. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the silken tofu. Oh my god, my tongue, I feel like just cannot say. There's certain words I cannot say, and I think that's one of the words. But anyways,
it's still 6 a.m., Lisa. You still have a full pass.
No, like I don't know. There's like certain English words too that I can't pronounce. Like my tongue is like doesn't go to the top of the roof mouth. Anyways, but that's besides the point. But yeah, like here you have all these varieties of tofu, and I feel like that really confuses people sometimes, because also depending on the brand or manufacturer, they label it very differently. Like they'll call I've had some brands name it medium firm tofu, but it's like very soft tofu, like traditional tofu. And then now I've been seeing tofu packets called wording with the name traditional tofu. So it's like people are like, what the heck is traditional tofu now? What is this added extra label of tofu? And traditional tofu is, I found, to be very similar to that middle ground of being between soft and medium firm. So I would say it's more so of the soft tofu category. And then in terms of like using it in dishes, extra firm, medium firm, great for baking and stir fries and stuff like that because it holds up well. Great for crumbles too because you can kind of crumble it. And then with soft and silken, I love to eat it just raw and just put like certain sauces over it. One of my favorite is negi miso. And then a vegan version of niku miso is also very, very good. Simple soy sauce and wasabi when I'm lazy, or like something like yudofu, where you kind of add the soft tofu into the kind of like a soup almost, and then you kind of cook it in a broth. And then one of my most recent obsessions has been putting the soft tofu in soy milk and then topping it with cheese and microwaving that. Not traditional, but so good.
What?
With a little bit of natto.
I love it.
Yeah, with a little bit of natto on top. Oh, it's been like my recent obsession. But
that sounds properly mucky
it's so
and
good.
trashy, and I love it. I'm so trying that.
Yeah, with a little bit of dashi powder. Don't forget the dashi powder in the soy milk. That adds.
Always.
Yes. But I was gonna say, like, people don't know that you can actually like cook with silken tofu and like deep fry it and do all these other things to it. People are always assuming like silken tofu, don't cook with it because it breaks apart, don't use it. And I really like it, especially in like tofu scrambled, a little bit of that along with the maybe medium firm tofu for the extra texture. And there's more to like soft tofu than just blending it in smoothies. You can there's so many ways to eat it, right? Especially now that it's summer. That's another word I can't say. Hiyayako tofu. Hiyayako tofu. Which is like cold tofu, which is basically cold tofu with like certain sauces on top, whatever you like. And yeah.
Yoshiko, what about you?
Yes, I'm same as Lisa. I love hiyayako, but it has to be freshly made one, which is very hard to get it in Australia or rest of the country too. So it's not gonna make Jake happy. So I am going to share that what my Irish husband, who is not big fan of tofu, he loves salt and pepper tofu. So deep fry always wins. So right?
Yes.
And also
Yeah.
And also that I like to hide the hard tofu, there's a crumbling, and make sure I season well or marinate well and put it in a gyoza, the Japanese dumpling, or another deep fried spring roll and stuff like that. And also I can wrap it into the rice paper roll, like a Vietnamese, rice paper roll. That's, it's a great way to hide the tofu and make sure the tofu is nice and crumbly and seasoned well so people can eat it like my husband. And also my favorite is I make the tofu mozzarella. I actually mix the silken tofu, kinugoshi tofu, with kuzu, which is a Japanese medicinal starch, and make a little mozzarella filling to it. So if I put it in the fire, it's gonna melt, and also you can put like a caprese, like a tomato and the basil and the olive oil. It's very yummy. So that's my favorite.
That's genius.
That is a top tip. Very quickly, just because salt and pepper tofu is just like, it's one of those ones that the meat eaters will slum it for salt and pepper tofu. How would you make that, Yoshiko?
Oh, yes. I actually I think the key is using the good peppercorns. So, mix with the red and the white and the black one. I put it in the blender and mix with sea salt and because I'm a healthy person, so I tend to use the, whole meal flour, but you can do the, how do you call it? The gluten-free version using the potato starch or other kind of thing, and just a deep fry. But I think everybody has a different flavor. I like not silken because it's harder to cook. So Lisa, so many people can't handle silken tofu, so I wouldn't recommend everybody to use the silken tofu to deep fry. But I like to use the silken firm tofu, little bit in between, which is not available in Japan, but I'm sure that you can get it. And my husband likes the firm tofu version. But yes, just make sure that your salt and pepper tofu have a good kick of the black pepper. That's the key. Yes.
Right.
Yes. I
so
can
you
give
season
you
the flour, you roll it in the flour, and you deep fry it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yes.
We'd love to stick that on the website. That'd be amazing. Well, I knew that was going to be a good round of what do you do with tofu, and it was. Right. I'm conscious that we need to smash on. We're running out of time. Jane says, I've tried vegan ramen in 2 different restaurants, and to me it tastes like dishwater. Crikey. I used to love a beef ramen so much as it was filled with fat and flavour. How can I get these rich flavours into my vegan ramen at home? Crikey. Tim.
Well, if you want fat and flavor in your ramen, you just got to add lots of fat and flavor, I'm afraid. I've done several vegan ramens, and probably my 2 favorite. There's one which is basically a vegan tantan men. Tantan men is the Japanese version of dandan noodles from China, which is a sesame base, and it's spicy. So at the restaurant, we do an aubergine and courgette, eggplant, and this is the UK podcast.
It is UK, yeah. We're pretty bilingual.
Eggplant
here.
and zucchini tantan men. So aubergine and courgette diced up, and then we cook that in a lot of house-made chili oil, which has obviously chilies. It's got Szechuan peppercorns. It's got garlic, ginger in there. And that just gets absorbed into those vegetables because they're so absorptive, I guess. What's the word? Absorbent. Yeah. So those become oily and very, very flavorful and spicy. That's sort of our topping. Then we make a broth. The broth is a mushroom dashi. It's like a rich mushroom dashi, which we season with soy sauce and a bit of mirin. We also blend into it tahini or sesame paste. So you get a lovely, rich, thick, fatty body from that broth. And then we just sort of pile it all in a bowl. You need good quality alkaline ramen noodles for this. And we just keep it simple with the garnishes, just some a little bit of blanched cabbage and some spring onions, and that's it. It's delicious, and it's absolutely full of fat and flavor. The other one, which I won't go into in detail, is from my book, which is much less traditional. It's a French onion ramen. I was eating French onion soup at one of my relatives' houses in Wisconsin, and I thought, why isn't this ramen? This should have noodles in it.
Yes.
And it's great because it doesn't need to be beef stock. You can use, again, a mushroom dashi as your base and then season it up really, really well with things like soy sauce, and port works really well in that, and then obviously loads and loads of caramelized onions. And those caramelized onions get tangled up in the noodles when you slurp it, and it just works so well. It's one of my favorite vegan ramens that I've made.
That sounds fantastic. Yoshiko, what about you?
Yes, I actually run the ramen cooking class. It's vegan, but the half of the attendees doesn't know if this is the vegan or not. I'm cheeky, but I have to satisfy those people, right, with a lot of flavor. So as the team said, put a lot of flavor. So that's what I do. So I put a lot of dashi, which is a mixture of kelp, the kombu, and the mushroom. That's the base. And also the key is I put a lot of fat. It's very important, as Tim said. So I used the toasted sesame oil, and it's depending on what sort of the broth I'm making. Soy sauce broth, I actually use the onion and the ginger, and with lots of the oil, and I cook very slowly to enhance the flavor. That's the very key. So if you cook too early, you don't get the good flavor to it as well. So the miso broth, I actually cooked the white part with shallot or leek, and the ginger and the garlic. Again, cook with lots of the toasted oil and the very, 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 very slowly. So, even you keep cooking on the bottom because it's going to stuck together. But, the traditional ramen, you have to cook 24/7. That's a long time. But, we try to achieve to cook within 1 hour. So, we can do that part very well, then cook with the broth. And, that when you use the shiitake and the kelp with all the slow cooked, all the thing, it's going to make a beautiful umami flavor. And add the miso or soy sauce, it's going to be perfect. Yes. I'm happy to give you the recipe from my book too. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you. Lisa, what about you?
I think with ramens, the broth is really important. And if that restaurant isn't doing justice for the broth, they shouldn't be serving it until they nail it. But with the broth, I think it's really important to just like pack it with flavor. Because typically ramen broths, like Yoshiko was saying, it's made for a long time, right? They have it like they have it going for like hours and hours to make that really good ramen broth for that stock, right? And then with vegan ones though, I found that starting with a really good umami rich base and then kind of adding a lot of really good toppings and adding an aroma oil really helps that ramen broth. So things like one of my favorites is miso chili oil or garlic oil. Those are really, really flavorful. And also scorched scallion oil is really good. Ryu, which is Japanese chili oil. And also the noodles, like there are different noodles that you want to use for different ramen. So the twirly noodles will pick up more of the broth when you're eating it. So that makes the ramen taste obviously better because you have more sauce clinging onto the noodles, right? Whereas the so like the soya based ones or like the shio ramens that are more lighter in broth, it doesn't really need to pick up that much. It's not as that's why you'll see those ramens use like the non-wavy noodles or something. So I think it's like the combination of pairing the right ingredients, noodles, and broth together, plus adding a really good aroma oil.
Top tips. Thank you. Okay. Hopefully, Jane, it won't taste like dishwater.
Yeah, I mean, that's sad.
I would say, what's wrong with dishwater? I drink it all the time. Anyway, Simon says, you don't want to waste it. You don't want to waste it. Anyway, Simon says, can I have a mushroom recipe, please? Yoshiko, let's start with you.
Mushroom recipe. I love shiitake mushroom. So can I give you the very simple thing, like a shockingly simple one. I just buy the fresh mushroom. I put a little sea salt on top and drizzle a little olive oil, put it in the oven. Yum. Sorry, is that too simple?
Roast it. Perfect. That's
my favorite.
No.
That's my favorite.
I'll totally take that.
Yes.
Lisa, what about you?
Okay, I'm like thinking back at the recipes I've done, and I can share the recipes with you as well. They're on my blog, but two of my favorite is, okay, actually I'll give you my top favorite. My favorite is the kaki fry made with oyster mushrooms. So with the oyster mushrooms, they kind of, or you can also use maitake mushrooms if you're able to find that. I find maitake mushrooms a lot more expensive and harder to find here in Canada, but in Japan, it's a lot easier to find. And you can even, I've actually even made this with shiitake mushrooms as well. Very good. But what I used is oyster mushrooms, not the king oyster ones where you would see people making vegan scallops, but the ones that kind of come in clusters. And then I use that to make kaki fry, which is kind of like kaki fry in Japanese is fried oysters. But the maitake mushrooms are very soft and have that kind of in the inside is a little brown and white, and it almost even looks like oysters. I can show you the picture later, but it's very interesting, and that's probably one of my favorite, along with the tartar sauce.
And Tim, what about you?
Yeah, so one of my favorite Japanese mushroom dishes are these little mushroom parcels. which you bake, and they sort of steam the mushrooms inside of them, or you can do it in a pan as well. But basically, you take a variety of Japanese mushrooms. I really like shimeji best for this, but enoki, eringi, shiitake are really good too. With the shimeji and the enoki, just break them up into smaller clusters. With the eringi or the shiitake, you might have to cut them down into bite-sized pieces. Pile them into foil pouches, add a splash of sake, a splash of soy sauce, and a bit of grated garlic to each one. And maybe something green like chives or nira, garlic chives if you can get them, just chopped up. Seal the pouches and then put them in an oven at about 200 degrees for about 15 to 18 minutes, and they'll steam inside and keep all those lovely mushroom juices and become seasoned with the soy sauce and sake. Take them out, and then you open it up at the table, and you get this burst of delicious garlicky soy sauce, mushroom aroma. And this is a must with rice or crusty bread to sort of soak up those juices. Oh,
wow. That sounds so good. Right, the last of our listener questions is from Josh, who says, I would love an East Asian burger recipe. Thank you, Jake and Paddle. Can't wait to hear this episode. I'm sure you'll agree. Josh, it has not disappointed. Tim, let's come back to you. Do you do burgers?
Oh, yes. In fact, at my restaurant, we used to do a sasebo burger, named for the town of Sasebo in Nagasaki Prefecture, which is actually famous for burgers, if you can believe that. But yeah, I actually did recently a menchikatsu burger. Menchikatsu is usually beef mince, breaded and fried. So it's a mince katsu, basically. But in this case, we used mock meat. We used Beyond Meat. So any kind of like vegan or plant-based burger patty you can get, just flour that, then dip it in a mixture, like a thin batter of flour and water, and then panko breadcrumbs. You can shallow fry that or deep fry that, and it's amazing because you get this crunchy exterior with this juicy middle. And then to make it into a burger, like a proper sandwich, just burger bun, mayo, very finely shredded Hispy sweetheart cabbage, and of course lots of tonkatsu sauce, Japanese brown sauce. And it's amazing.
That's I think I just glimpsed.
Oh, sorry. One thing to add to that, you can actually, we did a version of that which had deep fried vegan cheese as well. We got the vegan cheese slices, we froze them, breaded those, and fried them as well. So you got this double crunch.
They did
vegan
it.
meat, vegan
they
cheese. They
actually
thing.
did it. Oh my god!
It was great. Really good.
That sounds, that sounds problematically good. Lisa, do you burger?
We do. Nothing too Japanesey or crazy, but I like to add teri mayo, which is teriyaki sauce and mayonnaise together, and that's one of my favorite condiments. And we just use the Beyond Meats or the Gardein. I haven't really come up with like a Japanese style burger per se, but I am currently working on a karaage style burger and also a beef fry burger inspired by the ones at Moss Burger in Japan.
Nice.
What's karaage?
Karaage is Japanese fried chicken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
That's current project right now.
I love it when people talk about projects like that. It's so exciting to imagine you doing it. Yoshiko, what about you?
Well, I don't do much burger, but I do have a recipe that the same as Lisa. Like I like to make the teriyaki and mayonnaise. That's an amazing friend. So I know, Jake, you like just to put the cheese. You're gonna be happy about it. But me, the teriyaki sauce and the mayo is the best friend.
Yeah.
But the key
as far as I'm concerned, mayonnaise is a beverage. So.
Okay, that's good to hear. But whenever you put the plant-based, it's kind of we need a good fat. But mayonnaise will do. But if you put the eggplant, you will soak up all the oil or cook the caramelized onion with oil. Those things is going to add more fat and the yumminess add to it. So I just make sure I do those a little trick to satisfy the fatness and the junky foodness. That's what I do. Yes. And I did the tempeh teriyaki burger, which is not too bad. I wish I could cook for you, Jake.
Tempeh? We were doing so well, and then at the 11th hour, you had to bring up tempeh.
You guys don't like tempeh?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't say I don't like tempeh. I would say if I saw someone eating it in the street, I'd knock it out of their hands.
Oh my gosh, I love tempeh.
What?
Oh my god, that's funny. Yeah, I love tempeh.
Really?
At first,
so
I
much
didn't.
Respect for you. And
at first, I didn't though.
Okay.
I will say that I think it was the brand and also the way I ate it. I literally just took it out of the package and kind of ate it like how I did tofu, and that's not. I mean, now I kind of enjoy that, to be honest. But in the beginning, I was like, whoa, it's a little weird. It's a little crunchy, and I wasn't used to it. But now I love it. I don't think it's Sorry, I don't. I take back the word weird. I thought it was a little different, like texturally in my mouth. Like it wasn't what I was expecting. It was more so like I thought it was gonna be soft like tofu and also soft or like the beans would be softer. But yeah, a lot of people ask if natto tastes like tempeh, and I don't think so. I think it has a very different flavor to it, right?
You've led straight into one thing that I really quickly wanted to touch upon. By the way, I don't think saying tempeh is weird is going too far. I would describe it as a culinary atrocity. But Lisa, I did want to talk to you about natto. I saw you. I had a quick look at your Instagram feed, and I saw you eating some natto. Now I had some natto, and it's an extraordinary thing because as you stir it, it kind of changes texture and it kind of turns into this amazing gooey thing, doesn't it? Tell me what it tastes like. Tell me why you love it.
When people ask me what it tastes like, every time I say the same thing, but I think it tastes like coffee. And I've had people say like they get that same flavor, whereas other people are like, no. It tastes like it tastes like.
Where are you drinking your coffee?
It tastes barbaric. Right? It's like but then it's interesting because those people that disliked it at first end up really liking it after the third or fourth time having it. And I think the key to enjoying natto is learning how to add it to certain dishes. So one of my favorite combinations of natto, like I said earlier, is kimchi and avocado. Natto also goes really well with cheeses, vegan cheeses. I honestly can eat it just like that, but there are so many ways to kind of mellow out the strong natto flavor, but also still get that really nice nutty flavor. So I feel like people, when they first try it, don't be concerned if you want to like it, because there's so many health benefits to it. And I know a lot of people want to eat it, it's just they can't get over the texture and flavor. So I think after the first try, give it a second, third, fourth go and try it with different ingredient combinations, and then you'll figure out kind of like what you like to eat it with, because like most people don't like it off the first, like right off the bat. Yeah.
Unlike tempeh, which should just be consistently binned throughout your life, I think you're right with natto. It is an acquired taste, but it does. It's kind of like, you know, those pieces of music. Sometimes you listen to a piece of music and you think, I hate that, and then a few days later you're like, I want to listen to that again, and I don't know why, and then it becomes one of your favorite pieces of music. Yoshiko and Tim, are you fans of natto?
Yes. I wanted to give you a little tip, Jake. The natto, I ask you to try hikiwari natto rather than big natto or small whole natto. Hikiwari natto has less smell, okay? And also the higher in vitamin K as well. So it's one of the best vitamin K rich food, the hikiwari natto. It's better than the whole bean natto. So I would recommend you to try that one. So it's already chopped up and it's not fermented that long either. So I think it's a beginner natto for you. Hikiwari natto.
Nice. Fisher Price natto. I love it. Tim.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like natto, but the texture is a challenge for me. I think that Lisa's description of the aroma or the flavor is a bit like coffee is really good, because it's got this kind of nutty, toasty. I think the smell of it or the taste is great, but it has this sticky, kind of slimy texture, which in Japanese is called neba neba. And I can only take that in sort of, it's the same kind of texture you get from the middle of okra. And I can only take that texture in sort of small bites. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, I was having breakfast, and I decided to put natto on what's called tamago kake gohan, which is a raw egg cracked onto rice with soy sauce. And that's also, the egg white in particular is quite neba neba. And I had that with natto, and it was kind of like a neba overload, and it was a bit much for me. So I think that sort of if you're on the fence about natto, you can try to sort of add another texture, even something simple like just sliced crunchy spring onions, or eating with a bowl of rice, something like that. Will sort of take the edge off that sliminess and maybe let you enjoy natto a bit more.
This sounds crazy, but there's a classic British dish is beans on toast, like baked beans on toast.
Oh,
yeah.
I feel like natto actually would lend itself really well to that.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a good thing. Oh, amazing. I did a thing.
Yeah,
well done,
I put the natto toast on my cookbook. And another thing I forgot to tell you, when you cook the natto, it's actually less challenging. So you can put in the fried rice or, and I actually make the croquette or actually make the natto mapo tofu as well. So that's actually good. It's less challenging for you, Jake.
It's great in okonomiyaki too.
Lisa, do you actually make your own natto?
I do. So it's more so of, it's not really, I mean, you can make it from scratch at home, but you do need the natto starter. And I personally find finding that natto starter is more difficult than finding the frozen packs. So what I like to do to kind of save money is I buy the frozen natto packs, and I would kind of do what people do with yogurt and make their own yogurt at home. And kind of basically you're making more of the food with a little amount. And with natto though, you can only do it, I found, maximum 3 times. So you can use the natto you made and then use that little bit as the starter for your next batch, but only for a maximum of 3 times. Whereas I think with yogurt, it's forever. Like it's a continuous forever once you have it. Whereas natto, the bacteria weakens quite a bit after the 3rd trial, I found. And then you get less of that neba-neba-ness. And I mean, that could be good. That could be, I mean, I really like neba texture. Like this is one of my favorite combinations, but it's natto, nagaimo, okra, and basically everything slimy in one. And I love that texture so much. And I put in miso soup, one of my favorite styles of miso soup. But opposite of Tim, but I mean, everyone has their own favorite kind of textural preference. But I think making your own has saved me a lot of money just because I eat a lot. But
All right, final question. I'm so sorry I've kept you for so long, but it has been a really, really fantastic listen. Miso zuke. This is another thing I saw on your Instagram feed, Lisa. I just wanted to ask, well, all of you about it, because it looks like something for vegans that could be really, really exciting and different. Do you want to describe what it is, Tim?
Sure. Miso zuke is so miso is miso, zuke is pickled. So it's things pickled in miso, and this can be quite a quick sort of marinade type job, or it can be a longer fermented process. And all it really involves is taking any kind of fresh vegetable usually, but you can also do it with tofu and other things, and packing it in miso until it takes on the flavor, and it takes on the salt, and in some cases sort of re-ferments and preserves. My 2 favorite things that I've had as miso zuke is garlic. I had some garlic that was preserved in miso for a year, and it was unbelievable. It tasted like caramelized garlic basically, but it still had a nice firm texture. So good. And then the other one I like is tofu miso zuke, because that gives you, because tofu is often described as like cheese, which it is and it isn't. And I always think of miso as having some of the same aroma and flavor as cheese. It could be fruity, nutty, salty. So if you put them together, if you pack tofu in miso for a few weeks, it comes out, it has a creamier, denser texture after having lost some of its moisture, and it also has picked up that nice cheesy flavor from the miso. So it's a great drinking snack. If you slice that up and have it with a little bit of, just drizzled with olive oil and maybe a bit of sea salt, it's great with wine.
Sounds amazing. Yoshiko, are you a fan?
Yes. I like making the miso, tofu no miso zuke using the different type of miso. Like I sometimes use the hacho miso, shiro miso, and ordinary awase miso, and everything tastes so different. So basically that the miso starts to break down the protein in the tofu and the melt down, and it's good to spread with the cracker, sometimes put on the pizza, or and I put another cheese, and it's so full of umami flavor.
Cheese.
So yes.
Yeah. Lisa, it was on your Instagram feed. I saw it. Yeah, garlic is a great idea. Lisa, it was on your Instagram feed that I saw it, and so you did tofu, and it was like a block of tofu that you'd covered in miso. Is that right?
Yes. So with misozuke, there's places in Japan that will ferment their tofus for years too, to get that really rich, almost cheese-like texture and flavor. And I started experimenting with that, and in the beginning it was totally going wrong. Like it was like molding, and it was like the flavor was weird, and like I didn't, and I've realized it was because of the moisture content and stuff like that. You really have to take care of that. But I think it's totally worth it. It's not like cheeses you would buy from the store, like vegan cheeses, like nut-based cheeses. It's a completely different experience. It's very like, I would say it's almost like, I'm trying to describe, like, I didn't really...
almost like a kind of a cheese spread almost?
It's almost like
it goes quite soft,
taking
right?
cream cheese, and I think it's called brie cheese. I'm trying to think. I haven't eaten real cheese in like 10 years, so I think it's the brie cheese, where it's very soft, like gooey almost. Yeah. And you combine cream cheese and that together, and you get this really rich, I'm going to say rich again, rich tofu. And with this, though, it's so interesting because with cashew-based cheeses, it's very heavy and fatty, right? Which is good. Like it's good. It's good for what it is. But with this one, it's purely tofu, and you get that even richer texture. So I found that really interesting and kind of cool. And the flavor is really just packed in there, so you don't need to eat a lot of it, especially with the ones that you're fermenting for a longer period of time. I've done the ones where you ferment, or I guess you kind of like marinate it for like 2 or 3 days, and that is a really good snack, especially with things like sake and like beer. It's a really good finger snack alongside with like some pickled vegetables or even like raw vegetables to pair it with, or crackers. But yeah, the misozuke I usually make are the ones that are fermenting in the fridge for like an extended period of time, and I really like to use that over like toast and bread, and like even with natto, really good. Cuts the natto flavor a lot. So yeah,
I'm definitely going to be experimenting with that. All three of you, it has been the most wonderful listen. I can't thank you all enough. Before we go, tell everybody where they can find you and your stuff. Tim, let's start with you.
Well, you can find me in Lewisham.
In Lewisham? I grew up in Lewisham.
Hey, Lewisham. Lewisham's great.
No, it isn't.
No, but mainly you can find me at my 2 restaurants, both called Nanban, one in Brixton and one in Covent Garden. And you can find my books wherever quality cookbooks are sold.
Amazing. I can't believe you live in Lewisham. That's extraordinary. Yoshiko, what about you?
Yes, I have I'm sure that not so many people can join my cooking class in Sydney, Australia. So you can find cookingwithyoshiko.com. That's my website. You can find a recipe. You can find the ramen recipe or salt, pepper, and the tofu recipe in my blog post, as well as I have the Instagram Cooking with Yoshiko, same again. So that's the way you can find. I have a YouTube, YouTube video. So.
Yeah. Okay. We're all the same with that. Yeah. And Lisa, what about you? When it's not 6 a.m?
No, I'm awake now. But you can find me in Toronto. Just kidding. But okonomikitchen.com is my blog where I have all my recipes, and then I share like I'm more active on my social media. So on Instagram, Okonomi Kitchen. I also post on TikTok and sometimes on YouTube, but I'm most active on Instagram, so you can reach me there if you have any questions.
And there we must finish our first stop on our world tour of vegan food. Thanks so much to my guests. Next time, we're off to Africa. But if you've got any questions about Mexican cuisine, we're going to be recording that one shortly, so get them in. It's podcast@veganlifemag.com. Don't forget the magazine Vegan Life is available in shops or online, or there's an app. And please do remember to subscribe and share this podcast. We really do need to keep it growing. Thanks so much for being here. See you next time. I'm Jake Yap. Bye-bye. This has been a Swanburst Media production.